A trio of hearts, humanity's quietest triumph. The relay station drifted alone at the far edge of known space, where star maps faded into guesswork and silence pressed against the hull like a living thing. It was an old structure, built before faster routes were common and most people had forgotten it still existed. The station had no weapons, no shining plates of armor, and no grand name. It only listened. Elias had the night watch, though night meant very little here. The stars outside the wide front window never blinked. He sat in a worn chair, one hand resting near the console, eyes moving across slow streams of data. His job was patience. Long hours passed with nothing more than background noise and distant echoes of cosmic radiation. This was normal. This was the reason most people did not want this posting. Behind him, the station breathed softly. Fans hummed, old metal shifted as the temperature adjusted. The place felt tired but steady, like something that had learned how to endure. Elias liked that. He had learned early in life that loud places hid mistakes. Quiet places showed the truth. A soft tone broke the stillness. Elias straightened. The signal indicator glowed a pale blue. That alone was strange. Most incoming noise was scattered and weak, easy for the filters to dismiss. This was different. It had shape. He tapped the console and leaned forward. The data rolled out slowly, not as words or images, but as a repeating wave. It was uneven, rising and falling like a breath taken by someone who was tired or hurt. That's not debris, Elias murmured to himself. He flagged the signal and sent a quiet alert through the station. Mira arrived first. She moved with calm steps, dark hair tied back, eyes already sharp with focus. She did not speak right away. She stood beside Elias and watched the pattern form again and again. It's too regular, she said finally, but not clean. It feels strained, like it's breaking down, Elias replied. Rowan joined them moments later, still adjusting the sleeve of his jacket. He was the youngest of the three, but his eyes carried the heavy look of someone who had seen too many systems fail at the wrong time. "You woke me for this?" Rowan asked, then paused as he saw the display. His tone shifted. "Oh." The three stood together in silence, watching the signal repeat. The relay station had one purpose. It was not to speak first. It was not to warn or threaten. It was built to listen, to gather, and to pass information along without judgment. Most of the time, that meant listening to nothing. This was not nothing. Mira brought up long-range scans. "There's mass movement," she said. "Far out, but closing. Multiple objects. Slow, uneven drift." "How many?" Elias asked. Mira shook her head. "Hard to tell. They're not tight. It's like a group barely holding together." Rowan studied the signal again. "This doesn't look like a message," he said. "It looks like a symptom." Mira glanced at him. "A symptom of what?" Rowan hesitated. "Stress. Damage. Maybe biological feedback. I've seen similar patterns in human emergency scans. That changed the weight of the room." Elias checked the distance. "They're not responding to standard hails." "Maybe they can't," Mira said quietly. The station sent out a routine notice to Human Command, tagging the signal as unknown but non-aggressive. The reply came back hours later, short and careful. "Monitor. Do not engage. Await further instruction." By then, the objects were closer. Through the forward sensors, shapes began to form. Not sharp or clean like human ships, but uneven, almost grown rather than built. Their surfaces reflected little light. They moved as if pulled forward by habit rather than control. Elias felt a tightness in his chest. "They're coming straight at us," Rowan said. "Yes," Elias replied, "but not fast." Mira studied their path. "They're not aiming," she said. "We're just in the way." The idea settled heavily. The relay station was a speck, but in a place like this, even a speck mattered. Hours passed as the distance closed. No weapons powered up, no shields flared. The station stayed quiet, listening, recording every small change in the signal. Rowan's hands moved over his medical interface. "If I'm right," he said, "then whatever they are, they're in trouble. System-wide trouble." "Could it be a trap?" Elias asked. Mira shook her head. "If it is, it's a strange one. There's no threat display, no warning. Just pain." The signal shifted suddenly. It grew weaker, then surged again, uneven and desperate. Rowan inhaled sharply. "That's not random," he said. "That's failing regulation." Elias made a decision. He opened a restricted panel and adjusted the relay's output settings. "What are you doing?" Mira asked. "Listening closer," Elias said, and maybe answering without speaking. He tuned the station's sensors to mirror the signal back, softened and stabilized, like a steady hand placed over a shaking one. The response was immediate. The alien signal changed. Not stronger, not weaker. Aligned. Mira's eyes widened. They noticed. The largest object in the drifting group shifted course by a small but clear degree. "It's separating," Rowan said. The vessel moved alone now, leaving the others behind. It did not accelerate. It drifted slow and uncertain, straight toward the relay station. Alarms did not sound. There was no sign of attack. But the meaning was clear. "They're coming here," Mira said. Elias nodded. "Yes." Silence filled the room again, heavier than before. The station had no defense plan for this. No first contact script. No guide for beings who did not speak and might not even know how. Outside, the stars watched without care. The vessel grew larger on the screen, its surface marked by deep lines and dull scars. Parts of it pulsed faintly, like organs struggling to keep rhythm. Rowan swallowed. "They're barely holding together." The docking alert chimed. Mira looked at Elias. "If we accept this," she said, "we change everything." Elias rested his hand on the console. "If we don't," he replied, "they may not survive long enough to matter." He authorized the docking. The station shuddered as the alien craft made contact. The sound was rough, unbalanced, but not violent, more like a tired body leaning against a wall. The airlock sealed, systems adjusted. For the first time since the station was built, something truly unknown rested against its hull. No greeting came, no threat. Only the faint, uneven echo of a living signal, still reaching out, not knowing if anyone was there to hear it. The three humans stood together, listening, and far beyond the station the rest of the drifting fleet slowed, as if waiting to see what would happen next. The alien vessel rested against the station like a fragile sculpture, unsteady yet persistent. Its surface shimmered faintly under the station lights, revealing ridges and folds that seemed more organic than mechanical. Inside, there was movement, subtle but constant, like something alive shifting within a shell. The signal that Elias, Mira, and Rowan had followed now pulsed from the ship itself, uneven and broken, yet strangely rhythmic. Elias watched the readings on his console, fingers hovering over the controls. He had expected alarms, maybe a hostile response, but nothing came. Only the faint pulse of life struggling to persist. Mira stepped closer. Eyes narrowed. "They are alive," she whispered. "Not machines." Rowan nodded slowly. "I see it too. It's like a body trying to hold itself together." The idea made the room tense. They'd trained for emergencies, for disasters, for hostile encounters, but this was different. No protocol covered a situation where the visitors were not enemies or allies, but creatures in desperate need of aid. Mira brought up the environmental readings. The air within the alien vessel was faintly toxic to humans, slightly acidic, but the sensors suggested life functions were continuing. Their physiology, whatever it was suffering, and the pattern matched the pulses they had been seeing from the distant flotilla. "Rowan, could you stabilize them without contact?" Elias asked. Rowan hesitated. "Possibly. I can send in drones with medkits, feed their environment with neutralizing agents, maybe help their internal functions, but it's risky. If I miscalculate, I could make it worse." Elias nodded. "We do not have the choice of waiting for command. They will not survive long enough." The three of them worked quietly, almost in unspoken agreement. Rowan activated a set of small medical drones. They floated toward the alien vessel, guided by soft lights and gentle currents. Each drone extended tiny appendages, touching the vessel where it pulsed most erratically. They emitted a soft hum, the same frequency as the human heartbeat, hoping it would provide a familiar rhythm to the unknown life within. The pulse changed almost immediately. Not stronger, not weaker, but steadier, more synchronized. The vessel trembled slightly, but the reading on the console showed progress. Mira leaned closer to the window, watching the ship. "I think it understands we are not threatening," she said. Elias frowned. "Understand might be too strong. Response maybe? Reaction? But not comprehension, not yet." The hours dragged on. Outside, the rest of the flotilla had slowed to a near halt. Elias and Mira checked the sensors repeatedly. The distant ships were watching, waiting, but they made no move. Rowan continued to guide the drones, each adjustment careful, small, precise. Sweat formed on his brow despite the station's temperature controls. At one point, the alien vessel shuddered violently and one of the drones faltered, its systems disrupted by a sudden pulse. Rowan held his breath, recalibrating quickly. The pulse faded. The ship settled. The drones resumed their work. Elias tapped the console. They are communicating, but not with words. This pulse, these changes, they are language in its own way, a signal of need or distress. Mira exhaled slowly. We are the first humans to ever do this, I think. The first to respond without expecting to receive. Ours became a long, continuous loop of observation, adjustment, and subtle interaction. Each pulse from the alien ship was mirrored gently by the station's drones, creating a conversation neither could fully understand, but each could recognize. The vessel shifted slightly closer to the docking port. It was a careful movement, as if it was testing the waters, aware that it might be safe but uncertain. Then the pulse pattern changed abruptly. It became faster, sharper, more urgent. The signal spread through the station sensors, triggering alarms that were more internal than external. Elias studied the data, his brow furrowed. They are injured more than we thought. Something internal, maybe an organ system failing. It's not mechanical, it's biological. Rowan's hands flew over the drone controls. I can try targeted support. I have to be precise. One wrong step, and I could stop a function completely. The three of them had never faced this kind of uncertainty. Here was a creature, not human, not known, yet clearly sentient in its own way, suffering. And it was entirely in their hands to act. The drones moved in tighter, glowing softly as they administered energy pulses, chemical stabilizers, and minute temperature adjustments. Rowan monitored each system carefully, noting the smallest changes, sending corrections when needed. The pulse patterns began to normalize, slow but steady. Mira glanced at the distant fleet. The other ships remained still, almost reverent. They are watching, she said quietly. They are learning from us. Elias nodded. Not learning words, learning behavior. And perhaps trust. Time stretched again. The vessel trembled, shivered, and then relaxed. The pulse pattern smoothed, forming a new rhythm that suggested relief. Rowan's face broke into a small, tired smile. They are stable, for now. Elias exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. We cannot overstep, we stabilize, but we do not control. We observe, we guide, we listen. That is all we can do. Mira looked through the window, her eyes reflecting the faint glow of the alien ship. Do you think they will survive the journey back to their flotilla? Elias shrugged. Perhaps not. But we gave them a chance. That is all humanity can ever hope to do at the edge of space. The vessel shivered again, slowly retracting from the docking bay, still tethered but beginning to drift away. The pulse pattern softened, still present, still communicating, but less urgent, less desperate. The drones continued to hover nearby, ready to react if needed. Rowan leaned back in his chair, hands resting on his knees. It is strange, he said, helping someone who cannot speak, who cannot thank us, who might never understand why we are here. Mira nodded slowly. That is the quietest kind of triumph, the kind that does not get reported in fleets or councils. But it matters all the same. Elias turned to the console, watching the last readings as the vessel prepared to leave. They will remember the pattern, and maybe, someday, we will recognize it in them again. The station settled into silence once more, a gentle hum from the life support systems filling the empty spaces. Outside, the stars continued their endless shimmer, indifferent and beautiful. The distant flotilla had resumed its slow drift, a shadow fleet moving without urgency, leaving the station and its human crew in peace for the moment. Hours later, as they checked the data one final time for the day, the three of them shared a quiet understanding. Words were not necessary. Their triumph was subtle, hidden, unannounced. The creatures they had helped might never communicate again, but the moment had changed something in both species. Humanity had acted without expectation, without threat, simply because it could. And that, in the endless dark of space, was something worth knowing. The pulse of the alien ship faded slowly into the distance, leaving only the echo in the station sensors. Elias, Mira, and Rowan listened one last time, then began the slow, careful process of logging every detail of the encounter. For the first time in many weeks, the station felt full, not with noise, but with purpose. The mission of listening had become a mission of connection, fragile yet real. Outside, the stars washed silently, and the edges of human space seemed just a little warmer than before. The alien vessel had docked more securely now, resting against the station with a cautious stillness. Inside, subtle movement continued, but now it was different. The life within was changing, slowly adjusting to the new support the humans provided. The pulse signals, once jagged and desperate, had taken on a rhythm more steady, though faint tremors still hinted at lingering strain. Elias, Mira, and Rowan gathered near the docking interface, each listening intently to the soft patterns of the pulse. For hours they had observed without direct contact, relying entirely on drones and sensors to maintain a delicate balance between aid and interference. Mira spoke first. "They're trying to respond to us now. It's small, almost invisible, but there's intention behind it." Elias nodded. "It's like they recognize the gesture, the action, not the meaning." Rowan leaned over his console, adjusting drone parameters. "I've never seen a species that doesn't know how to ask for help. But they react when someone acts." The room was silent for a moment, each of them considering the odd, quiet miracle they were witnessing. A species so advanced yet unprepared to request aid. It made their mission here feel fragile, almost sacred. Suddenly the alien vessel shivered. One of the larger internal structures shifted, sending the drones into minor corrections. The pulse signals spiked, erratic and sharp. Rowan reacted quickly, deploying a new stabilizing protocol. The pulse steadied, but only just. "They're in more pain than before," he said. "Something internal is failing." Elias studied the readings. "We have to help them without touching them, without frightening them further." Mira's eyes flicked to the screen. "If we try direct contact, we might trigger fear. It's not their way to trust." Rowan nodded. "Then the drones must continue." "Every adjustment has to be precise. One wrong movement, and we could cause irreversible damage." The hours stretched. Outside the station, the rest of the alien flotilla remained at a distance, drifting like sentinels. They made no move to intervene, only observed, their signals faint but constant. It was as if they understood the delicate balance unfolding at the station. Inside, the trio continued their work, monitoring life signs, adjusting drones, and interpreting the subtle pulse patterns. Each adjustment, each small success was a silent conversation. The vessel shifted slightly closer to the docking bay, tentatively exploring the space it now shared with humans. Elias leaned back, watching the largest of the pulses slowly align with the drone patterns. "They are learning from us," he said quietly. "Not words, not speech. Behavior. How to survive with help they did not know how to ask for." Mira studied the distant fleet. "That is the strange part. They are not aware that they are observing, yet the rhythm changes with every correction we make." Rowan adjusted the environmental systems of the drones, fine-tuning temperature, chemical stabilizers, and energy pulses. Each minor change brought subtle improvements. The vessel shivered, relaxed, then shivered again as the internal processes struggled to catch up with the external aid. Hours passed like minutes. Finally, a breakthrough came. The largest pulse, the strongest heartbeat of the vessel, began a smooth, steady rhythm. The tremors decreased. The vessel no longer shuddered violently when the drones adjusted support. Rowan exhaled deeply. "They are stable, at least for now." Elias studied the readings. "This is remarkable. We have not just helped them survive. We have taught them to adjust without being able to ask. That is a rare kind of communication." Mira nodded. "They may never understand what we did, but they will remember it. That is enough." Outside, the distant flotilla shifted slightly. It seemed almost imperceptible, a subtle change in formation. The station sensors detected a weak but deliberate pulse, matching the vessel's new rhythm. It was a signal of acknowledgement, not gratitude in the human sense, but recognition nonetheless. Rowan smiled faintly. "They know we acted without expecting anything in return. That is something even we struggle to do sometimes." The alien vessel began a cautious departure from the docking bay, tethered lightly but moving with purpose. The pulse signal slowed slightly but remained steady, suggesting that the internal systems could now handle minor fluctuations without human intervention. Elias, Mira, and Rowan stood together, watching the vessel drift back toward the flotilla. The silence between them was full of understanding. No words were necessary. The humans had acted without expectation, and in return, they had forged a fragile bond of trust with a species that did not know how to ask for help. As the vessel disappeared into the distance, the station settled back into its quiet routine. The three of them logged every detail, every signal, every pulse. The data would be valuable, yes, but more importantly, it would serve as a record of a quiet triumph. A moment where humanity had chosen compassion over caution, understanding over fear. Hours later, after checks and recalibrations, the trio gathered near the main viewport. The stars stretched endlessly beyond, indifferent and unchanging. Yet in the stillness, they felt a subtle warmth. A victory unannounced, unrecorded by fleets or councils, yet profoundly significant. Rowan finally spoke, breaking the silence. "I wonder if they will ever truly understand what we did." Elias smiled faintly. "Perhaps not. But understanding is not always necessary. The act itself is enough. That is the quietest kind of triumph." Mira nodded, watching the faint glow of the last signals fade from the sensors. "We acted without expectation. We gave them a chance. That is all humanity can do at the edge of space." The station continued its gentle hum, the pulse patterns now quiet, stable, and lingering as a reminder of the encounter. Outside, the distant fleet drifted slowly, no longer anxious, no longer desperate, but observing, silent witnesses to the bond forged in the quiet of the station. The three humans remained together, feeling the weight of their actions, the significance of a choice made without reward, and the knowledge that in this vast and different universe, small acts of care could ripple outward in ways impossible to measure. And, somewhere, far away, a species that had never asked for help had learned to survive because humans had chosen to act, even in silence and solitude. The relay station no longer felt as quiet as it once had. Even though the alien vessel had moved back toward its fleet, the space around the station seemed tense, filled with unseen attention. The sensors picked up faint echoes from the distant ships, not messages, but steady patterns that suggested awareness. They were watching, waiting. Elias noticed the first warning as a small flicker on the power display. At first, it looked like nothing more than a minor fluctuation, the kind old stations experienced every day. He logged it automatically, then paused and looked again. "That's not normal," he said. Mira stepped beside him. "What is it?" "Power draw," Elias replied. "The medical drones are still pulling more than expected." Rowan frowned and checked his interface. "They shouldn't be. I reduced their output after the vessel stabilized." Another flicker passed through the system. This one was stronger. Mira's voice grew serious. "The station was never designed for extended biological support. If this continues, we'll start losing non-essential systems." Elias nodded slowly. "And then essential ones." Outside, the alien flotilla shifted again. The movement was slow but deliberate. The ships were spreading out slightly, forming a loose arc around the station. It did not look like an attack formation, but it was not random either. "They are positioning," Mira said. "Not aggressively, carefully." Rowan swallowed. "Like they are trying not to scare us." The thought settled heavily in the room. Hours passed as Elias rerouted power, shutting down unused systems, dimming lights, slowing internal processes. The station grew darker and quieter, its hum softer than before. Rowan continued to monitor the drones, making small changes to reduce energy use while keeping the alien vessel stable. "We're buying time," Rowan said, "but not much." Elias leaned back in his chair, eyes tired. "Command still hasn't responded?" Mira shook her head. "Nothing yet. Either they are debating, or they are afraid to make the wrong call." The truth was clear to all three. If a human fleet arrived now, armed and cautious, the fragile balance would shatter. The alien species had shown no sign of violence, but fear could change everything. The station's long-range sensors suddenly chimed. Mira stiffened. "Multiple warp signatures, human." Elias felt his chest tighten. "How far?" "Close," she replied. "Too close." The human command fleet emerged into the system like a sudden storm. Sleek, powerful ships formed a defensive line, weapons charged but not yet aimed. Their presence changed the space immediately. The alien flotilla reacted at once, tightening formation, pulses growing sharper and faster. "They're frightened," Rowan said. "Their signals are spiking." Elias opened a direct channel to the fleet. "This is Relay Station 7. Unknown life forms present. They are injured, not hostile. We are providing aid." The reply came quickly, firm, and controlled. "Relay Station 7, disengage immediately. Withdraw support and prepare for containment protocols." Mira clenched her jaw. "Containment means force." "Yes," Elias said quietly. "It does." Outside, the alien ships shifted again, their formation tightening further. The distant pulses grew uneven, echoing the distress seen earlier. "They think this is our doing," Rowan said. "They don't understand the difference between us and the fleet. Elias made a choice. He cut the external broadcast channel. Mira looked at him sharply. Elias. If the fleet advances, he said, the aliens panic. If they panic, someone fires. If someone fires, this becomes a war. And command? Mira asked. They will have to wait. The station's power dipped again, this time more dangerously. Warning lights flickered to life. Rowan checked the systems. We're running out. If we keep supporting the drones and shielding the alien vessel from sensor targeting, we may lose life support. Silence filled the room. Mira spoke softly. Then we keep going? Rowan looked at her. Even if it costs us the station? Yes, she replied. Because if we stop now, everything we did means nothing. Elias nodded. We were sent here to listen. To understand. This is what understanding costs. He rerouted the remaining power manually, overriding safety locks. The station groaned in response, old metal protesting the strain. Lights dimmed further. Secondary systems went dark. Outside, the alien vessel that had first docked moved slightly closer again, its pulse shifting, mirroring the station's weakening power rhythm. They know, Rowan whispered. They can feel it. The alien flotilla emitted a new pattern, faint but synchronized. It spread through the system like a slow wave. The human fleet hesitated, their sensors struggling to interpret the unfamiliar signal. On the bridge of the command ship, confusion replaced certainty. No weapons fired. No orders were given. Inside the relay station, power levels dropped to critical. We have minutes, Rowan said. Elias opened the internal log and began recording. This is Elias, Station Watch Lead. If this is recovered, know that we acted to prevent conflict. We treated life because it was there, not because it asked. Mira added her voice, steady despite the situation. These beings did not threaten us. They did not ask for help. They only suffered. We chose not to ignore that, Rowan finished quietly. If this station fails, remember that silence is not absence. Sometimes it is a choice. The lights flickered again. Life support alarms chimed softly. Outside, the alien flotilla began to move. Slowly, deliberately, they placed themselves between the human fleet and the failing station. Not aggressively, protectively. They're shielding us, Mira said, disbelief in her voice. Elias watched the display, heart pounding. They learned faster than we thought. The human fleet halted completely, power drained to its lowest point. The station fell into near darkness, only emergency lights glowing faintly. The drones shut down one by one, their task complete. The alien vessel's pulse stabilized on its own, holding steady without assistance. Rowan slumped into his chair. We did it. Or they did. Elias allowed himself a tired smile. Together. The station drifted, silent and weak, but intact. Outside, two species faced each other across the dark, neither firing a single shot. In that moment, no one spoke. No victory was declared. No banners were raised. But something had changed forever. The universe had witnessed a quiet stand, made not with weapons, but with restraint, patience, and the willingness to risk everything to protect a fragile understanding. And in the dim heart of an old relay station, three humans waited, unsure of what would come next, but certain they had chosen the only path that felt right. The relay station drifted in near darkness. Only a few emergency lights remained, casting long shadows across the control room. The hum of the systems was faint now, uneven, like a tired breath. Elias sat at the main console, hands resting still, watching numbers slowly change. Every reading mattered. Every small change could mean the end. Outside, the alien flotilla held its position. The ships formed a wide, gentle barrier between the station and the human fleet. They did not move closer. They did not retreat, they simply stayed, silent and steady. Mira stood near the viewport, arms folded, eyes fixed on the distant lights of the human ships. They are confused, she said quietly. They expected fear, or force. Rowan nodded from his seat. Instead they see restraint. A soft chime sounded. One of the external sensors blinked back to life for a moment before dimming again. Elias leaned forward. The aliens are sending something new, he said. It's not the same pulse. Mira turned quickly. Knew how? Elias adjusted the filters. There are 3 overlapping patterns. Slow, balanced, repeating. Rowan's eyes widened slightly. 3? Yes, Elias said. And they're not random, they're deliberate. The signal flowed through the weakened systems gentle enough not to overload them. On the display, the patterns aligned in a strange harmony. Each one was different, yet connected, like 3 heartbeats keeping time together. Mira felt a chill run through her. They are copying us, she said. Not our words, our presence. The three of us. Rowan leaned closer. Trust, concern, resolve. Those are the emotional markers I'm seeing. Elias swallowed. They learned that from watching us. Outside, the human fleet remained still. Command channels crackled faintly, but no direct orders came through. The alien signal spread outward, washing gently over the system. It was not a warning. It was not a threat. It was a statement. The command fleet's sensors struggled to classify it. Weapon systems remained idle. Targeting solutions failed to lock. On the relay station, the power dipped again. Rowan checked the life support. We're close. Very close. Mira looked at Elias. If the station shuts down completely, Elias finished the thought, the signal ends, and they may think we are gone. Silence filled the room. Rowan broke it softly. Then we leave something behind. Elias turned to him. What do you mean? Rowan moved to the medical console and began typing slowly, carefully. The drones recorded everything. The pulse patterns. The adjustments. The way we responded. Mira understood. A memory. Yes, Rowan said. Not a message. A record of behavior. Elias nodded. Send it through the signal. Let it ride with their rhythm. Rowan hesitated. It will take power. Elias looked around the darkened station. Then take it. Rowan initiated the transfer. The station shuddered softly as energy flowed into the broadcast. The emergency lights flickered, then steadied. Outside, the alien flotilla reacted at once. The three-pattern signal grew stronger, clearer. It wrapped around the human data, carrying it outward like a shared memory. Mira watched, breath held. They're accepting it. At the edge of the system, the human fleet received the same signal. Not translated, not explained. But unmistakable in its intent. On the command ship, officers watched in silence as their screens filled with unfamiliar yet calm patterns. Medical readings. Stabilization curves. Proof of care, not conquest. Back on the relay station, the final power warning sounded. Rowan whispered. That was the last reserve. The station went dark. For a long moment, there was nothing. Then, slowly, emergency systems restarted at minimal function. A single console blinked on. Life support stabilized at its lowest safe level. Elias exhaled shakily. We're still here. Mira sank into a chair, weak with relief. So are they. Outside, the alien flotilla began to move. Not away, not closer. They shifted formation, opening a path between themselves and the human fleet. The three-pattern signal pulsed once more, then faded. The human fleet did not advance. Instead, they powered down weapons. Hours passed. Rescue craft finally approached the relay station, slow and careful. Human engineers boarded, wide-eyed at the darkened systems and the thin margins of survival. They held this together with almost nothing, one of them murmured. Elias, Mira, and Rowan were escorted to the medical bay. Exhaustion weighed heavy on all of them, but none were unconscious. They watched through a small viewport as the alien flotilla turned, drifting away in the same quiet manner it had arrived. Mira spoke softly. They didn't stay. They were never meant to. Rowan closed his eyes briefly. But they will remember. Days later, reports spread through human space. No battle. No victory parade. Only confusion, debate, and eventually understanding. The data from the relay station circulated quietly. Analysts struggled to define it. There was no treaty. No clear exchange. Only proof that humanity had chosen patience when fear would have been easier. The relay station was decommissioned soon after. Too damaged. Too old. But no one argued. Elias, Mira, and Rowan were reassigned, though none of them ever truly left that edge of space behind. They carried it with them, in memory and in silence. Far beyond mapped routes, the alien species continued its journey. Its ships carried 3 steady rhythms within their systems now, subtle but permanent, not copied, remembered. In time, those rhythms would be recognized again, far from the place where they were first born. But for now, the universe returned to its quiet state. No one carved monuments. No history books shouted the moment aloud. Yet something had shifted. A line had been crossed, not with force, but with care. And somewhere in the vast dark, 3 hearts had taught an entire species what it meant to stand between fear and violence and choose neither. Weeks later, the relay station floated in calm orbit, still scarred from the strain of its mission. Engineers had arrived to assess the damage, repairing life support enough to make the station habitable, though it would never return to full operation. Elias, Mira, and Rowan walked through the dim corridors, careful of weakened panels and flickering lights. Every step reminded them of the hours they had spent holding the station together with nearly no power, no reserves, and no certainty. The station was quiet, but it carried a pulse of memory. Systems recorded every signal, every adjustment, and every subtle interaction with the alien vessel. Though the crew had left, the station itself seemed to hum with the echo of those hours, a faint vibration that made the metal walls feel alive. Mira paused at the observation window, watching distant stars streak past. "It feels different," she said softly, "like the whole system changed while we were gone." Elias stood beside her. It did, not in ways anyone could measure yet, but it changed. Rowan joined them, hands in pockets. "They're still out there, aren't they?" "The fleet we helped." "Yes," Elias said. "They survived." "They learned to adjust, not because we taught them, but because we acted." Outside, faint traces of the alien flotilla's signals lingered, subtle and almost imperceptible. Somewhere far beyond, the 3 overlapping pulse rhythms still echoed in space, carrying the quiet record of humanity's care. The fleet had remembered. Not words, not faces, not demands, just the act itself. Weeks turned into months. Reports came from analysts, scientists, and distant fleets. The story of Relay Station 7 spread slowly, as whispers of its actions filtered through channels. There was no glory, no awards, no official recognition at first, yet those who understood the depth of the encounter grew quietly proud. The 3 humans were reassigned, but none left with the same sense of detachment they had once felt. Elias continued monitoring remote stations, but he carried the memory of fragile trust across the void. Mira worked in analysis, often replaying the pulse patterns in her mind, still learning from the interaction she had witnessed. Rowan returned to field engineering, but he now always paused to think about the life he might affect before he touched any system. And far beyond the edge of mapped space, the alien species drifted onward. The 3 synchronized pulse patterns had become part of their fleet's operating rhythm. They had learned, without speech, without explanation, the subtle lesson of action without expectation. They could survive differently now, safer, guided by memory of something they had never been asked to understand. Months later, the relay station's crew gathered for a small, quiet ceremony. No officials attended, no cameras recorded. It was simply the 3 of them and the hum of the station that had been their life for so long. Elias placed a hand on the main console. "It's over," he said softly. "But it's not finished." Mira nodded. "Every time they use those rhythms, they remember. We will never see it again, and that's okay." Rowan added, "We didn't need recognition. We did what we could, and it mattered. That is the victory." They stood in silence, listening to the faint hum, knowing that in the vast, indifferent universe, their quiet actions had resonated far beyond the station walls. It was a triumph that required no applause. It needed no banners. It existed simply in the choices made when no one was watching. Outside the viewport, the stars stretched endlessly, indifferent yet welcoming. Somewhere, far beyond sight, the alien fleet carried the memory of 3 humans who had acted without expectation. They had learned a language of behavior, of care, of quiet courage. The station, battered but intact, seemed to pulse once more, a subtle echo of that distant lesson. The 3 humans felt it, a gentle confirmation of the hours spent at the edge of space, holding life in their hands without ever claiming ownership. Elias exhaled. "Humanity doesn't always need to be loud to be strong." Mira smiled faintly. "Sometimes the quietest actions leave the deepest marks." Rowan looked out at the stars. "And sometimes the universe notices even when no one else does." They left the station that day with heavy steps but light hearts, not because they had conquered, not because they had been rewarded, but because they had done the right thing, and that was enough. Far away, the aliens continued their journey, their rhythms intertwined with the memory of humanity's quietest triumph. In the endless dark of space, 3 pulses continued to beat together, a silent promise, a record of compassion, and a reminder that even in vast and different reaches, life could still teach and still learn from quiet courage. And in that moment, the universe seemed just a little warmer, carrying the echo of 3 hearts that had chosen action over fear, understanding over conquest, and care over silence.